What's up, fanatics? So, do you need another reason to hate the Los Angeles Dodgers? No? Well, I've got one for you anyway. I'm Tim Clark, and you're listening to the Musings of a Sports Fanatic, a podcast found exclusively here at PennSports.live. So, before I get to the Dodger fiasco, as always, I'm going to go right to the applause meter for FeedSpot. There we go. FeedSpot's had me ranked in their top 20 of podcasts in the Philly area, even though I'm a mostly Pittsburgh type podcaster, but I appreciate their support and implore you to go to FeedSpot where you can find all kinds of cool stuff, cool podcasts. So check out FeedSpot. All right. So this Baker, is it Baker, right? Or Walker, I forget what his last name is, the owner of the Dodgers, former owner of the Lakers, sold them because he's in the midst of some type of financial fiasco that involves potential insurance fraud. It falls short of a Ponzi scheme, but it's sort of along those lines. And you wonder how the Dodgers could afford to have all those deferred contracts, starting with Shohei Ohtani, and it's just gone on and on from there. Um, he's robbing Peter to pay Paul. He's taken from his insurance. He's first of all he's bilking people. That think they're buying honest to goodness insurance. But he's taking loans out of his own businesses to shift them over here, and then things kind of, and that's so the Laker. He sold the Lakers, but now there's some question as to whether he will be asked to give up his ownership of the Dodgers. And it's kind of ironic because when he took over the Dodgers after the McCourt bankruptcy, which actually put the Dodgers in fantastic financial shape. And also the news is that potentially this TV deal they signed was a little shady as well, and not on the up and up in terms of what baseball, the guidelines they have. But you couple that TV deal with the sweetheart bankruptcy deal and all the money they're getting back. He was set up pretty good, but billions of dollars involved in this scheme and billions of dollars in deferred contracts for the Dodgers. And now there was a big debate on in the Twitterverse about, well, there's one more nail for the salary cap. I don't think this has anything to do with the salary cap, quite frankly. This is just a shady shyster. And there's more and more of them you're hearing about. Years go by, and remember the guys for that banking, whatever that was, that ripped off all the people that worked there. They went to jail. That was down in Houston, I think. Heck, the president of the United States is pulling all kinds of shady, crypto nonsense. So it's a bit these shysters that thrive on just I can't get enough money, and in this case, he needed to get enough money because he continues to bankroll his team based on money that he didn't have to pay them. That's why the deferred contracts. But to go back to the salary cap thing, I think all the other owners, and even he mentioned, if you remember, I want to say it was maybe back towards the beginning of this season. Maybe it was in spring training. I can't remember when he said it. He admitted that the imbalance wasn't good for baseball. Now, he didn't come right out and say, hey, we need a salary cap, but he admitted that the imbalance, in terms of salary or payrolls, I should say, in baseball was not good for the sport. But I can tell you all the other owners are now on board, and it has nothing to do with whatever this thing turns out to be in LA. But the owners are on board with wanting a salary cap, realizing that the day has long since passed that they can survive um, status quo in the game of baseball. So um, interesting, though. The poster child for a salary cap would be the Los Angeles Dodgers. And even though I don't think this has anything to do with, oh, well, now they're definitely going to get a salary cap, that kind of thinking, this does show you, I mean, shady business, going on out there. And just, again, just another one of these billionaire shysters, or maybe he's not a billionaire, maybe he's a millionaire shyster, but, um, you know, these poor people that were, hey, let's sign up for some life insurance and whatever, had no idea what they were going to end up being caught up in. So um, I hope he gets what's coming to him, and quite frankly, I hope the Dodgers get what's coming to them, because I said if they win again, then salary cap, but salary cap's going to be a done deal, one way or the other. So why not have someone knock off the Dodgers while we're at it, before they win another World Series? So, all right, let's go on to other stuff. By the way, I will, when I hop into the time machine later in the podcast, it'll kind of, we'll go back to talking about I guess, labor strife in Major League Baseball. So stay tuned for that. But let's go to golf first. The big talk in golf this week was the live players. John Rahm has pretty much made it known. Move my camera a little closer. Sorry. John Rahm has made it known that he's done. He's playing his final live tournament this weekend. And seriously, I know I always make fun of live, but like, you got to dig deep, even though I don't even know where they're playing. I don't even know where the tournament's at. That was a failed, those guys made bank, man. They set themselves up. First of all, they were going to be set up for life anyway. But you know how, again, hey, if I can get more money, that's even better yet. And they did. Koepka and Rahm and DeChambeau and DJ, they all got bank, man, because Liv paid top dollar for those guys. But now it's over. Even though the owner of Liv, or GM, or whatever his title is, won't admit it, he's going to try and keep it together. And you know what? He probably will keep some of the lower players, because what are they going to do on the PGA Tour? They're not going to win on the PGA Tour. So it'll be like the minor leagues of minor leagues, because the Korn Ferry Tour will be better than Liv. So, he'll keep some of those guys, and no one will know them. So maybe he will keep it going. I don't know. But it's done in its current format. And so the players were at the PGA Tour players, a lot of the, Rory and Scotty, two specifically, that were asked, what do you think about the players coming back, and do they add value? You got two different answers from Scotty and from Rory. And look, I've always said, since this started, I appreciated Rory McIlroy having the guts to step out and say what a lot of the players were thinking. Like 90% of the players were thinking it. And Rory had the guts to say, I'll be the face of this. I'll go out and say it. And he didn't mince words. He didn't mince words about what was it? Was he being paired with DeChambeau, I don't like him. I don't like him. I think he's gotten into and so I respect that. I respect that. Now, do I think it has allowed Rory to get some maybe potential preferential treatment? Yeah, I think he sometimes gets treated differently, because the PGA Tour realizes he said the words that needed to be said, but maybe there wasn't someone else that was going to be willing to say them. So, having said all that, the fact I respect him for speaking the truth, Rory came out, and when he was asked that question this week, said something to the effect of, well, did they add any value to the Live Tour? Doesn't seem like it. He said, I think the PGA Tour is as good as it's ever been. he said, I think, we stand on our own 2 feet and with who we are and what we are. So I don't know that they're going to add value. Come on. Other than McElroy and Brandel Chambly on Golf Network. Other than those two, I feel like I'm probably the third biggest hater on Live. I hated when it happened. I hated that they took the Saudi money. To me, that's dirty money. They were trying to sports wash all their crimes that they've committed. I don't trust them one iota. Now I realize sometimes you got to sleep with the enemy. I get that, but so I was probably behind Chambly and McElroy. I was probably the next guy in line that hated this whole thing. But come on, Rory. You don't think John Rahm, and if you can get DeChambeau, who doesn't sound like, honestly, I think DeChambeau has drifted off onto his own planet. I think he's created his own planet. I know in his mind he has created his own planet. He's going to go do his YouTube stuff. I don't know what his deal is. I know Terrell Hatton wants to follow Rahm back to the PGA Tour, and they're going to pay a penalty. I saw something like a $35 million fine. So that's going to take a chunk of that money that they took from Live, and it's going to go to charity, which I think is I think a fantastic. I think on both ends. If Rahm says Kepka agreed to it. If Rahm agrees to it, PGA, and they're going to give that money to charities, I think is fantastic. Then something good is going to come out of all this. But for Rory to say that John Rahm and Kepka came back, and Terrell Hatton and his antics, and like I said, if they could get DJ or DeChambeau, I don't like DeChambeau either, but they add value to your tour. I mean, come on, let's. I gave you credit for speaking truth, and I appreciated it. I liked it. So let's be realistic. John Rahm and his talent being thrown back onto the tour is going to be a good thing. And that's what Scotty Scheffler said, who normally says the right thing. Occasionally I disagree with him, but he usually says the right thing. And he said, look, I think it's good I want to play against the best players. And with the new setup the PGA has, you're going to see that more often. These guys are going to be scheduled at the same events far more often going forward. He said, and I think the fans want to see it. I think you guys in the media want to see it. And he's exactly right. Nothing against some of these names. I have a name written down here for something in a second. Ryan Fox. I've already forgotten that Ryan Fox won the PGA Championship this year. Or was it the British Open? Whatever it was, whichever. I don't even know. I don't even remember what he won. Nobody cared. And that's, with all due respect to Ryan Fox, and I love that he plays fast, and no offense intended, but no one knows Ryan Fox, and no one really gives a crap if Ryan Fox is on the leaderboard. People do give a crap if John Rahm or Brooks Koepka or Rory McIlroy or Scotty Scheffler are on the leaderboard. People want to see Terrell Hatton curse a blue streak when he hits a bad shot. I mean, come on. These guys add value. It's a silly argument from McElroy to suggest otherwise. And I get it. I like I said, I'm probably third in line for people that hated the whole Live thing. But let's come on. Let's be realistic here. So anyway, as far as the PGA Tour, the nearly dead corpse of the FedEx Cup is still going on. I'm one of the two people, maybe not even two, maybe I'm the only one, I don't know, that think it's an okay event. I don't love it, but I like it. I mean, I get to watch. It's the end of summer. It's for me. It'll be back to my day job soon. And college football, pro football starts. So it's the end of the golf season where you really get a chance to pay attention to golf. So I like it because I'm getting to see the best players in the field. And they're going to will it down each time until you get. Now, here's what I find funny. People that complained about, oh, that what a silly thing to let the first place person start at 9 under, and then the next two guys start at 7. Everyone complained about that. That's a contrived system, so they got rid of it. And now the final next weekend, the final tournament is just winner takes all. You could have been in 30th place, or you could have been in first place, whoever wins the tournament. And Scotty Scheffler said last year, he said, look, I think it's good. I think, you got to go out and win the tournament. He said, I have no problem with it. But the same people that hated the system before are now the same people that go, whoa, this is dumb. You could finish first and then you're not like, and you're going to tell me that's the FedEx Cup winner, the best play. Look, it is not a perfect system. What it does is you get a chance to watch a tournament 3 weeks in a row with the best of the best playing. Um, and until further notice, and they have changed it, they've tweaked it. I think we got one more year, if I remember correctly, of the FedEx Cup, and then on to a slightly different system to end the season. And maybe you'll like that better. But until further notice, this is what it is. And again, it's not perfect. It's not great, but it is the best they can do right now. And it gives you a chance to watch one more time this summer, Scheffler and McIlroy and the rest of them, the great players with, in the same field. So what, as far as the FedEx Cup stands, it really comes down. Here are the names vying for those last 5 spots to get into the top 30. The other ones, unless they would absolutely, I don't even know mathematically, even if they would bottom out, mathematically they might still finish in the top 30. But here are the names if you're really interested in who's going to make those last spots to get a chance to play for the championship. You've got Justin Rose, our buddy Ryan Fox, Adam Scott, Sungjae Im, who has been lights out for 2 weeks. If you want to see, I don't, excitement's probably not the right word, but he came from down towards the bottom of the 70, and he played great last week. Had a chance to win, and then he's playing great again this week. So he's bounced up a bunch of spots. Sungjae Im. And Tom Kim. And then, so those guys are in right now as I'm speaking to you, taping at an odd time this week, Saturday morning, August 22nd at 11:45 a.m. So as I speak at you now, those guys are in. And then Michael Thornbjornsen, Patrick Cantlay, who also has bounced up quite a bit. Kitayama, Ricky Fowler, who's dropped. I was kind of hoping Ricky would make. I cheer for Ricky. He was in the top 30. Now he's slightly out. Bud Colley, who I'm sure you're all following closely, and JT Poston, who I'm sure you're also following very closely. And this is what I mean. Would you rather see John Rahm and Brooks Koepka fighting for one of these spots, or Bud Colley and JT Poston? Well, let's be real. Let's be real. But anyway, that's what it comes down to here as this weekend rounds into form. They're in St. Louis. Crowds are gigantic. Players love it. Huge crowds. While Liv is finishing up with like 6 guys drinking beers, walking up and down the fairway. So anyway, on to baseball. I've been pounding the baseball drum quite a bit, and I feel like I don't have a lot of new things to really comment on. I will comment on the Pirates in a minute. I would feel naked if I didn't complain or comment on Pittsburgh. But anyway, the AL wild card. I was going to do it in my rant section. I guess, you know what? I guess I'll do it now. I'm looking at my notes. I'll do it now. Then that'll cut my rants down a couple. This is ridiculous. Currently, the Twins, the Rangers, the Jays, the Guardians, the Tigers, the Orioles, the Mariners are all within 3 games of one another. They're all below 500. I think Seattle, 3 games back, is like 8 games below 500. I think I said 500. I think 80 wins might get you in the playoffs. And if you can't have an above 500 record in a 162 game season, you should not be in the playoffs. And I think baseball needs to examine their system. I know they're not going to change it. I told you last week when my buddy that I walk with, Mark, he said, "Well, it does it keeps more fans interested." You think Seattle fans are really interested? Oh man, that's if we just get on a hot streak. I can't. I would make the argument that they're ready to pack it in, and that they're sick of watching. For example, a position player pitching because it's 21-0, and your star player Julio Rodriguez has no clue how many outs there are, and he catches the second out and promptly tosses the ball up into the stands. While I forget who they were even playing, but they're rounding the bases because he's a chucklehead. Um, I would argue Seattle fans are not interested. I would argue that the O's fans are now. I think Baltimore, they have a pretty good fan base, but they gave up at the trade deadline. The Tigers gave up at the trade deadline. The Jays gave up at the trade deadline. For heaven's sakes, the organizations themselves said we suck, and we're gonna try and build for the future here at the trade deadline. This is a hideous sight. The whole American League, really, quite frankly, minus four teams, is just absolutely horrific this year. But I think, and again, it's not going to change. If anything, they'll increase it. But 100. We're talking about 162 games. We're talking about 162 games, not 81, not 82. We're talking about 162 games. Sorry, that's the best Allen Iverson I've got. 162 games has to mean more than, hey, as long as you get to 80 wins, you can get in the tournament. And then if you get hot, who knows? What will it look like for baseball if Tampa or the Yankees, it really, I got to be honest. I know the White Sox are having a fun year, and in Chicago baseball, could we see a Windy City World Series? Not totally out of the question, right? Because anyone could win the American League. Good God! And the Cubs are playing really well. More on them in a second. But how will it look if the Yankees or the Rays, who have been the two best teams, now the Red Sox went from the outhouse to the penthouse, get knocked off by the team that makes this last wild card? That's or I guess the last two wild card. Who is it? Yeah, I guess it would be the last two. No, 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 no. Yankees and Red Sox. It'll be just one wild card. So, but some team that finishes 79 and 83 gets hot for a 3-game series and bumps off one of the good wild card teams, or I guess it'd be a division winner, and then stays hot and bounces. You see what even if they don't make it to the World Series, what if they get rid of one of your good teams that earned their way through the 162 game season by winning 90 games or 92 games or 95 games? It is ridiculous. In 100, it's one thing in the NFL, and I don't necessarily agree with it in the NFL. I think they watered it down too. In college basketball, to me, is the one outlier. We have now seen, not very often, but we have now seen 16s beat ones and 15s beat twos in the college basketball tournament. So that's kind of an outlier, but I don't know, 160. They've been playing since the end of March. You've been successful. You've succeeded in a 162 game season, and now you're being thrown in a hat with teams that only won 80 games. It does. That's not right. I'm sorry. You can tell me all about the fans, keeping the fans interested, and Baltimore fans are interested, and the Guardians fans. The Guardians fans are only marginally interested ever. Um, like I said, you can't convince me Seattle fans give a crap whether they make the playoffs or not. Um, I'm sorry, it's not right. It is not right. if you win 95, 96 games and had a successful 162 game season over the course of what is April, May, June, July, August, September, a half a year. They played baseball for half a year. And now we're saying, well, as long as 80 wins, yep, you're in. It's ridiculous, and that they need to do something about that. But they won't. They won't because fan interest. Over in the National League, I am starting to think the wild card is pretty much a done deal. I'll tell you why. The Phillies came back in 10. They were jockeying back and forth last night with the Cardinals. They won that game 7-6 on Friday night. And look, they're now, 12 games over 500, 11 games over 500, whatever it was. Just a week ago, they looked like they could go either way. Ricky Bottalico was losing his mind. It looked like they were a team that might be sinking towards, more towards the 500 range. And then they got hot. They're like 8-2 in their last 10. I think they've won 5 in a row. And the Padres have finally figured some things out and are cooking like I thought they would. I'm hard pressed to see either of those teams in the last, what are we down to, 34 games, something like that, 35 games. I'm hard pressed to see them sinking far enough. Now, the one caveat is the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are only like a game behind the Padres right now for the third spot. Ketel Marte just left the team. He's their best player, and he just left the team. Second year in a row he's done it. And Torey Lovello, the manager, is beside himself. They put him on injured reserve now with a sore something or another for 10 days to figure out what the heck's going on. They are in communication with him. Now, sometimes a team will rally around a situation like that, and then sometimes a team will, that's their best player, and that's the catalyst, and that's going to kill them. I don't know which way Arizona will go. I told you when they played the Pirates, I looked at that team, and I said, that's a nice-looking team. And I would probably say that, honestly, with or without Ketel Marte. But so that's the caveat. Arizona could get hot, and one of those, the Phillies or Padres, could sink that far. But when you're talking about then going down to St. Louis, the Nationals and the Pirates, I guess, will be the next three. They're not falling that far. And none of those three teams are good enough to get on a streak where they win 10 in a row and get themselves back in the hunt. And even if you win 10 in a row, if the Phillies and Padres continue to go 8-2, 7-3, you're going to run out of games. You would have to go 30. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to run out of games before you would ever catch them in the standings. So I think the NL wild card, and by the way, just last week I preached to the Phillies fans. They're all down, and this is typical Phillies fans. Even if you don't live in Philly, my buddies around here that are Phillies fans are all the same. It's like you're all the same. Downtrodden, we stink. The bullpen's awful. The bullpen is kind of awful, to be honest. But so what if we get in the playoffs? It'll be the same thing again this year. But what if it isn't? What if it isn't? Hot streaks don't know history. Hot streaks are hot streaks. And maybe this is the year the Phillies get in the playoffs and they get hot and those bats warm up. And then you look and say, holy cow, hey, we got Sanchez going in game 1. We got Wheeler going in game 2. We got Luzardo going in game 3. We move Painter and Nola if we need an inning or a specific out to the bullpen. And maybe that makes the bullpen at least slightly better. So I don't think it's out of the question. Now, the National League, unlike the American League, the National League is stacked. I wouldn't want to play Milwaukee. I wouldn't want to play Atlanta. I wouldn't want to play the Cubs. And then, of course, you've got the specter of the Dodgers looming above all of those teams. I'm going to get to this in just a second, but I watched the Pirates-Dodgers last night, and that Dodgers lineup, they're booing Kyle Tucker because he stinks. Well, it's okay to have someone stink when you got the rest of that lineup. Pages and Freddie Freeman and Shohei. You get through Shohei like they struck Shohei last night. I was like, oh yeah, and there's Freddie Freeman waiting for you. So I don't think it would be easy for the Phillies, but I don't think it's out of the question if the bats get hot. Now, if they pull a typical Phillies and they're striking out all the time in the playoffs, then they're going to be a quick out. But for all those Phillies fans that are woe is me and will do the same thing as always, hot streaks don't know that. Hot streaks don't say, "Oh, this is when we're supposed this it's not supposed to happen now." Now I know players create the hot streaks, and the players do know history. So we'll see. But I mean, I think you've got a puncher's chance, once you get in. But we'll see. But boy, National League stacked. I said I wanted to mention the Cubs. I can't stand Pete Crow Armstrong. He looks like a bad version of a Beastie Boy, or something like that. But man, he can play the game. He is the MVP again. I said it last week. With all due respect to what Shohei Ohtani is capable of doing, pitching and hitting, I think this year Pete Crow Armstrong. I feel like his WAR is like 28 or something like that. Like he is a catalyst beyond catalyst for the Cubs, and he's got to be the National League MVP this year. But that's a team. There's a team that made the trade deadline their friend and really improved that pitching staff, which, quite frankly, would bottom them out. Now I think they've got a puncher's chance with certainly a better rotation than what they had. All right, sorry to talk about the Pirates, and they're out of it. I said it last week. To see, a lot. Greg Brown gets paid by the team, and God bless him. Greg Brown has watched so much bad baseball. He's had to call, do play-by-play for so many bad games in his tenure with the Pirates, and he's such a he's a positive, and he's a team guy, and I think he does go overboard sometimes. When they did the ninth inning, two home runs to win the game the other night against the Tigers. The best win of the season. He's screaming into the mic. He does but God bless him. Why wouldn't he? It probably was. And anytime they do something like that, it's those moments have been so few and far between. It's one thing for us as fans. This man has had to make his living calling these games. So when Greg Brown keeps, he's holding out hope, and Matt Capps and all the other guys that he is stuck with in the booth, we got to get on win streak. We can't just win series. We got to get. It's over. It's over. And this season, what I wanted to talk about with the Pirates this week, this season didn't end with this cold streak after the All-Star break. Obviously, that shut the coffin door. But there were a lot of things that went into this. Injuries are one of them. Their offense got so riddled with injury that eventually, some of the guys that had pulled up the slack went back to more of their norms. Brian Reynolds went back to more of his recent norms. Esmeralyn Valdez was never going to keep up that pace, and he's kind of come out of it a little bit. I wonder if he's getting tired. Kids get tired. 22-year-olds get tired, even big guys like him. He hit some balls off the wall this week that I think 3-4 weeks ago would have been 10 rows deep. But he's still, he's getting some hits. I like his approach at the plate. For a 22-year-old that sort of came out of the woodwork a little bit. They certainly had him on their, he was in their top 10, but he wasn't like a can't miss prospect. I think they really found something with him, but he cooled off. And so the offense finally succumbed to those injuries. And now O'Neal Cruz is back popping home runs. And did they miss him. He finally had turned into the player we wanted. And then he breaks his hand. Sort of the Pirates' luck, if you want to be honest about it. But so the offense cooled off. But when the GM didn't make any moves early in the season, and I want to say I don't know that there were any moves to be made. And even the men and women that cover the team, I don't know that they can say definitively. They get a little more inside scoop, obviously, um, but I don't even know if they can say definitively that Ben Charrington could have made a trade for bullpen help back in May or beginning of June. Um, I would like to know though if the attempts were being made because they lost so many games because the bullpen blew games that to me is where this season went awry. Um, is if they could have won those games that they had, what most teams would say sewn up, um, they would be in a different spot right now. Now they wouldn't be contending with the Brewers or anything like that, but they would be right there with the Phillies and Padres. Um, they'd be above 500. I think that's part of it. Is wait until the last second to get bullpen help. Now, I don't think he'd have got Luke Weaver, for example. I don't think the Mets were willing to trade Luke Weaver at that point. But I said it back then, and it seems funny to say now, but could have you got a Aroldis Chapman back in May when the Red Sox were in the outhouse? Now that they're in the penthouse, obviously, once they got on that roll, they weren't trading anybody. But I am curious whether they could have made a run at him. And again, maybe he did. Maybe phone calls were made and Boston said, you know what, we want to let the season breathe a little bit. So I don't know. But I'll go one step further to where this season was lost. Not just in this when they got cold after the All-Star break. Back to spring training when yours truly told you there were two problems with this team. One was that bullpen I just spoke of. And so there's where you say, how on earth could you go into the season thinking that was a satisfactory bullpen? That was one problem. And the second problem, I said about defense, but let me just swerve it over to this lane a little bit from the defense. Ben Charrington, for once, made some wonderful moves. And he also made one horrific move, which I called also. The horrific move was signing Marcell Ozuna to $12 million. A fat, out of shape guy that showed heavy decline last year. And the Pirates decided they would bank on him recovering to his former self. Not a great idea for someone that's out of shape in their 30s, mid 30s. So that was a bad sign. But he fleeced. Houston got Mike Burrows, who I don't know where he's at, double A, triple A. He's out of the picture for Houston. That was the only guy they gave up to get Brandon Lau, Jake Mangum, and God, I can't remember names. The closer that they have right now, who by the way should be their closer forevermore, to quote the Raven. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Good God, don't get old. You youngsters listening to this, don't get old. Find a way not to get old. Anyway, he is fantastic. He's lights out. He strikes almost everyone out anymore. But anyway, he fleeced them. Great trade. I am now, by the way, back on the side of this argument that let's see could you make an offer? Does Brandon Lau like Pittsburgh enough that he would take an offer, especially with a salary cap coming and potentially a lockout? Would Brandon Lau see that and say, you know what, I'd like to jump in here. I'm comfortable here. I like this. It's a cool city. He is from the South, so I don't know. Maybe he wants to go further south or something. I don't know. But I'm on board now with re-signing him. So that was a good move. Now, where I'm going to work the defensive, Brandon Lau is an offense first, defense second player. His defense, I would argue, was better than I thought, but still not great. But better than I thought. I said the Ozuna thing was bad, but Ozuna was only going to be able to DH. And they knew that when they signed him. He wasn't going to be able to set foot on the field for defense. Which made that a dumb signing. Like I said, Andrew McCutchen at least can be put in the outfield in case of an emergency. It's kind of like that break the glass in case of emergency, and there's Andrew McCutchen, and you could have put him out there for a week and he wouldn't hurt you. But anyway, Ryan O'Hearn was a great signing, and they have him for another year yet. Um, but he's a first baseman that they forced into the outfield because they already had a first baseman. And the first baseman they had, Spencer Horowitz, was not a good defensive first baseman. Ryan O'Hearn is. But being the better athlete, O'Hearn was the better choice to send out to the outfield. So where I'm going with this is, although they were all good moves, and I'm not thumbs up to Charrington on those moves this year, minus the Ozuna move. But he acquired the same player, other than Mangum, who was a throw in anyway. So let's take him off the board. And the pitcher that I can't remember the name of. Oh, God. Mason Montgomery. Good God. Um, so essentially, you got a bunch of DHs that, well, Lau would be better DHing, but he can play a somewhat decent second base. And he played a somewhat decent second base this year. Um, Horowitz would be better as a DH. O'Hearn would be better either as a DH or as a first baseman with Horowitz at DH. But that's right, we signed Tubby to be our DH. By the way, there was another mistake in the season. They waited a month and a half at least, minimum, too long to release him, where they could have brought someone that could have done something to the roster, to replace Ozuna. But why not? And I said this back then. Again, this isn't revisionist history. I said it back in spring training. I thought they should trade Spencer Horowitz. And you'll never convince me you couldn't have found a bullpen piece. Now, again, maybe not a Luke Weaver type. That's a total back end, high leverage guy. But you could have found someone better than those quad hoppers they sent out to the mound for the first 3 months of this season out of the bullpen. And then you could have moved O'Hearn into first base where he belongs, and Mangum, who I thought all along should start. And again, that's not revisionist history. I said that from the start that he would have been my leadoff guy, spark plug. Now he's annoyed the living dingle out of me this year with some of his stuff. The shine of Jake Mangum is a little bit off, but at the same time, he's still doing what he just does it with stupidity it mixed in which I could do without the stupidity. But anyway, that team would have been better. That team would have been better defensively. It would have been more balanced offensively. Not that the offense was, even with the slump lately, they're still the third best offense in baseball and the best offense I've ever seen Pittsburgh have statistically. Now, I still will favor the Stargell Parker era of my childhood, but statistically, it's as good as it's been. So anyway, that's where this season was lost right off the bat. And they still almost pulled it off. They almost pulled it off. And I'll end with this. I watched that game last night against the Dodgers, and Brown and Kevin Young was with them last night. You always, and I guess maybe as an announcer, that's the way it is. There's got to be a reason they lost this game, and they decided it was situational hitting. The Pirates didn't hit situationally. Look, they lost the game 5-4 in 10 innings. They were going up against Yamamoto, who's a Cy Young candidate. Again, he finished second last year. Situational hitting is tougher against a pitcher like that. So I'm going to cut them some slack. I watched that game last night, and I came away from that game. By the way, got to bed at like 1:30 thanks to that. But I came away from that game saying, you know what? The Pirates aren't that far away. That's the best team in baseball, maybe the best team that baseball has seen, even though the record might not indicate, because I think they're getting bored. Like, oh, we win all the time. You get bored. But that lineup, and then and now now the Pirates get to go up against Skubal and I think is it Snell in the next two games. Like, that's an all-star team. And the Pirates lost 5-4. And you know what? There was no one to blame. Here's the only blame I'll say. And Donnie Kelly, if he wants to be a major league manager, has got to stop doing it. He makes changes too early in a game where that spot in the order might come back around. Last night, Rafael Flores, who was having a terrible night at the plate, so it wasn't like he was doing anything, but he struck out and the ball got by the catcher and he reached first base. And he replaced him with Henry Davis, who is a good runner for a catcher, but I'd like to know, and I know those nerds that are sitting in their basement with all their analytics and their VBAP and PBAP and GBAP and whatever. I know they have they could wrangle up a statistic. What the percentage difference is if there's a ball hit to the gap on Henry Davis scoring from first base versus Flores scoring from first base? I bet it's like 2%. So there was absolutely no reason to burn someone off your bench at that point. And then guess who came up in the 10th inning with the bases loaded? Henry Davis, Mr. 170, hits into a double play. So if I want to lay any blame, that might be where I would lay the blame. But honestly, they just lost to a good team, a good pitcher. They got him out of the game, and O'Neal Cruz promptly hits a 2-run homer to tie it up at 4. Bubba Chandler only pitched 4 innings, and that was a problem. But he wasn't terrible. Max Muncy hit a 2-run homer off of him on a pitch that was 101 miles per hour up in the upper top corner of the strike zone. I don't know how the left-handers usually like lower pitches, and at 101 up and in, and he turned on it and he hit a home run like that. I'm sorry. That's where I hate the term tip your cap, but that's where you tip your cap if you're Bubba Chandler and say, holy cow, I'm not going to make a much better pitch. 101 up in the upper corner of the strike zone. And he hit a 2-run homer. So Bubba Chandler wasn't terrible, which sounds weird to say when he only went 4 innings. The bullpen was lights out. Soto gives up a hit there. You know, he almost got him out of the 10th inning. He had 2 outs. There's another one. The guy hit a slider that was below the strike zone. Now, he shook off Davis. Davis wanted a different pitch. He shook him off and went to that pitch. So, I mean, again, if you want to contrive an argument, but they just lost to a really good team last night, 5-4 in extra innings. There was nothing to that. There was nothing. This wasn't one of those games where the bullpen blew it or the defense blew it, or, you know, Mangum or Nick Gonzalez did some brain dead thing. This was it was a great baseball game. It was a well played baseball game. And there were great plays by both teams defensively. And they just lost. And as I went to bed, I was like, you know, the Pirates really are, they're not a bad team this year. Again, I just laid out why I think this season went south on them. And it's why it's why it's frustrating, because they had a chance this year to be a good team. And they're close. And now we'll have a lockout next year. And who knows what will happen 2 years from now when we finally have baseball again. Speaking of a lockout, let's see what's in the old 8-track player this week. Reason I picked that song, "Living Free, Living Easy," the first line of that song. That's me every summer of my life as a school teacher. Um, I took less pay to have my summers off, and I've enjoyed every one of them. But as I look at the calendar, and I am winding my career down, but I'm still there. Um, I am now on my highway back to school. So living free, living easy. Those days are over for me next week. Anyway, that's why I chose that song. Um, Going back to 1953 in the time machine this week. Um, the first noted labor dispute in Major League Baseball, and two players took the Rays sort of to went to the front of the line to represent the players, and that was Ali Reynolds and a guy that. If you're an old guy like me, you know as a Mets announcer, but was a great Pirates player, Ralph Kiner. And they hired a lawyer for the first time ever, and the players formed. Say it with me, the players union. And what were they fighting for in 1953? Pension benefits that they thought were woefully short. And you know what's interesting? I think not, I don't want to say every negotiation that they've had since, and I think this is true of every sport. I know football for sure. The pension system comes up. That what are we doing for retired players to protect their health and whatever. Again, that's especially true in football. But the pension thing never really goes away. I think if you're in a union, one of the things that you have, if you're in a union, is hey, let's see if we can keep pushing um, to get the better retirement stuff and pension stuff. So that was a number one on their list in 1953. And then I love this. They wanted to raise the minimum salary to more than $5,000. And there were a ton of players at the minimum back in those days. The only guys getting paid a little bit of bank back in those days were the stars. Um, could you imagine? Now, I know you can get gas for 13 cents and a loaf of bread for a nickel. I get it. But still, $5,000. And now you think um, $5,000 is one of those Dodgers deferred payments for like an hour. That's one of the payments, an hourly payment for a deferred contract with the Dodgers nowadays. But that's what they were fighting for, and decided that we need to come together as a group and form a union to fight this. And they were successful. They got a lot of things because owners also wanted to. That was the era of where we're going to start moving teams. Like owners wanted to go different. We're not satisfied here. We're going to move this team here. Players, they argued over players and who signed what player. The draft was a little scattered back then. We drafted, no, we drafted him. And so they both sides, I think, in 1953 were looking to iron some things out. But from the players' perspective, it was pension and hey, could we have a little more than $5,000 for our base salary? So I thought that was interesting. So here we go now back to present day where I think we're headed for a much more contentious situation in 2026 going into 2027. All right, let's get to the rant line, see if Spicoli's awake. Bud, what's your problem? All right, I'm glad he's awake. It is afternoon at this point, 12:20. Spicoli needs to be out of bed. All right. So I took one of my rants off the list. So let me go to a quick one. I continue to dislike the ABS system, and watching the Pirate game last night, the home plate umpire Malachi Moore was terrible. Um, and I had this argument again with my buddy Mark Walken this week, and it's funny because he said as a pitcher, here's one of my pet peeves about the ABS system. A ball that literally the stitches are in the strike zone, so it's just nicking that computerized square. I'm sorry, when you watch it in real time, which is how the game is played, the game's not played on a computer. The game's played in real time. And when I watch that pitch in real time, it's a ball. It's out of the strike zone. But it nicked that rectangle on the computer and it gets called a strike. Now, Mark was a pitcher back in his day, through high school and went to Lock Haven University and pitched. And he said, as a pitcher, I look at that and it's a strike. I said, no, it's not. It's not a strike. When you look at that, that's clearly a ball. And these guys, I don't give the modern day players much of an edge over the old timers, but I will say, and I'm not saying the old timers didn't have an eye for the plate. These modern players, I think, really have a pretty good knowledge of the strike zone. It might be the only edge I give them over the guys from back in my day, but they have a pretty good knowledge. And but here's the other thing. So not only that's a pet peeve of mine, but if the umpires are as bad as some of them that I've seen this year, and I know they're getting rid of some of the bad ones, they of course they had to make a set. There's union for you again. They had to make a settlement with them. They couldn't just fire them. But it's you only have two challenges. And even though you're like, well, man, I think he missed that one too. But you don't want to be wrong. And then all of a sudden, and like both teams, the Dodgers and the Pirates ran out of challenges last night. And that's the other thing. When the umpire's bad, now you get it in your head, I think especially as a catcher, like, holy cow, he's like not giving us anything. And you just sort of out of frustration, you tap your helmet and there you lose a challenge. I don't like the ABS system anymore. Now, I know the umpires say they like it and they think it's making them better. I think it's not. I think the bad umpires are still bad and the good umpires are still good. And I think that's the way it's always going to be, whether you have a computer there or not. And I don't want to see us go to a computerized system. So I thought this was worth a try. I thought it might make the umpires better, but I don't think that's true. I think if you're a bad ball strike umpire, you're going to continue to be a bad ball strike umpire because in real time, you see it the way you see it. So anyway, I'm done with the ABS system. My bigger rant, and I'm looking at my clock. I'll try to keep this to a minimum because I already ranted about it. But now ESPN is going to put Pat McAfee on their Monday night countdown show leading into the Monday night football game. So you won't be able to ever turn on ESPN anymore without seeing frat boy McAfee's dough head with his hat on backwards, staring at you, usually spittling or ranting or making fun of someone that he thinks is woke or whatever. It's ESPN is now officially unwatchable. I barely watch, and I know my friends tease me. I was the only one that still liked Corso. I know he was too old to do it, but God bless him. It was still a thing, the whole the mascot thing. And now I barely want to watch that show because McAfee takes over that show. Nick Saban, the hypocrite, who I liked before I realized after I read some books, and I he's a total hypocrite. It's a shame because, growing up, you flipped ESPN on because they were going to have highlights on. I could have flipped it on at like 2:30 in the afternoon. I'd find highlights. And I'd find good people doing it. Linda Cohn, who was the all-time professional. She was a pro. You didn't have to like. I don't know if you liked her or didn't like her. I was lukewarm on her, to be honest with you. But she was a pro. And she said it. She said, and she said what I've said. She said, God bless them. And I said that too. Anyone that can find a niche and make a bunch of money, good for you. Unless you're one of these shysters, then not good for you. But if you're like all these influencers, I think it's idiotic and stupid. I think it's the ruination of our society. But I don't blame them. If people are dumb enough to allow them to become rich millionaires by making TikTok videos, God bless them for finding a niche. Isn't that the American dream? Isn't that what we always hear? So good for McAfee. Really good for him. I think he followed up, sort of took the Barstool model for his show. And the Barstool guys, I like them and I hate them. I have a love hate with Dave Portnoy. When he says teachers are the most insufferable people he knows, I hate him. When he does pizza reviews, I love him. I like the pizza reviews. And so the Barstool guys, they are what they're. Look, they're frat boys. They're adult frat boys that are targeting that type of audience. And maybe the numbers say that's the audience you should be targeting. Maybe I'm just an old fuddy duddy that they don't give a crap about targeting. Um, and that's what McAfee does. But it's too much. You can't put the same, and I'd be saying that if it was whoever. You can't put the same guy on every show. Like, okay, I get that you laid off everybody else, but you can't have one single guy. And look, I'm sure he's like probably visited the Penn State frat houses a little bit. I would suspect that of McAfee, and maybe that's how he keeps his engine running to go from this show to this show to this show to this show. And then he's always posting on Twitter and all that. So I don't know when his wife and kid sees him and when he sleeps, but again, God bless him for finding the niche and making a whole bunch of money. But I don't want to see him. I don't like the frat boy stuff. And I joked that maybe I'm the old fuddy, but I think there's a lot. If that's the case, then there's a lot of old fuddy duddies because my Twitter feed was filled with hate towards McAfee, not him personally, but the fact that he's going to be on every time you turn the TV on, and that his shtick is not what they're looking for. So anyway, that's that. Off topic. How about the Penn State frat houses? How about maybe Penn State should shut their fraternity system down, at least for a while? From hazing deaths to fires to now a cocaine ring. Look, I said it on my wall to wall podcast a couple weeks ago. The Sandusky stuff just won't leave Penn State. So you've already got that image issue with that nonsense. The last thing Penn State needs, really any university, but particularly Penn State, is to allow all your rival schools a chance to continue to throw harpoons at you because you make negative news. Your athletic director, albeit I know my friend Scott said, "Oh, who cares?" I think a lot of people cared that he was dumb enough to get himself taped saying frat boy ridiculous things to players that he's supposed to be mentoring. And you have these, my back to my friend Mark, his son was in a fraternity at Penn State, the Ag fraternity, and that's the fraternity house that burned down. Mark said, I wasn't even surprised. He said, when I went in there, I was appalled. He said, outlets hanging out of the walls. And he said it was a complete poop show in there. He said, of course, the kid loved it. It's a frat house. They didn't care. He said, my son told me not to come back if all I was going to do was criticize. But he said, when it caught fire, he said, I wasn't even surprised. And fortunately for him, his son had graduated when that happened. But he said, I wasn't even surprised. He said, it was a fire waiting to happen. And now this cocaine ring. And by the way, my God, thank you, Penn State, because some of the funniest memes and GIFs, is it GIFs? Some of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just fantastic. But it's embarrassing. Come on. And even if you're pro fraternity, it has to still be embarrassing that this stuff is going on. And I don't think anyone's dumb enough to think that there's not cocaine probably floating around every college campus in America. But it's one thing to have a couple, a handful of people at a party, doing a line of cocaine and a ring. Now, I know this wasn't like South American cartel level cocaine, but it was. I know I read in the article that the amount and the money that was paid for it is enough to up the charges. So it wasn't just a couple kids at a party doing a couple lines. It was a little bigger than that, and they were having the pledges. That's what I never understood. I'm not a frat guy, and no offense to people that are. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I feel that way, but I never understood wanting to be beaten around for a semester, only then to be hugged and said, "Come on in, brother. You're one of us now." I don't need friends that bad. And I know people say, "Well, there's a network and connections." Isn't that true of that? You can make networks and connections um, without being in a fraternity or sorority. But anyway, but I thought that was it's certainly it's allowed me to laugh and laugh and laugh with the memes that are out there. And one last thing on the off-topic. Outer Banks season 5. Yes. It dropped here this week. I think about halfway through episode 4 or 5. Um, I can't even tell you why I like this show. It is the most ridiculous, um, unrealistic, unbelievable show that I've ever seen. And I think they've leaned into it. And maybe that's what I like about it. They're not even trying to pretend like their storylines should be believable. I haven't got to the end, so I don't know how it's going to end. So I'm not going to give anything away. But I think if you've seen the trailers, you know this. The premise is that they're going to try and find this crown that has powers that will bring someone back to life. And of course, their buddy JJ died at the end of season 4. Um, and so it doesn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together that the kids are going to try and find this crown so that they can bring their friend back to life. The ultimate unbelievable, unrealistic thing. And I love it. I love the show. I've always said this. Now, I do like true crime shows. I've mentioned them a bunch on here. And there's a couple on Netflix I want to get to here. So I do like that stuff. But in large part, when I watch movies and TV, I don't want realism unless it's a specific content, like a Civil War thing or something like that. That I'm in, I like history. Otherwise, I want stupid stuff that's going to make me laugh or just allow me just to enjoy something for an hour. And not think about real stuff. So if you're like that, then and if you have never watched The Outer Banks, start streaming it, man. You can rip through it. And but season 5, this is it. This is the end. And those people are going to go on to bigger things, maybe not, but probably better things. I wouldn't say any of them are going to win Academy Awards for their performances, but who cares? It's an entertaining show, and I plan to finish watching it next week. Get through the last part of it. I'll let you know without giving away the ending if it will be worth your while, but I can already tell you it is. So, all right, that's it for this week. I will be back again next week. One more in August and then into September. I am ready for some fall weather. We're getting some cooler temperatures here in central PA. But unfortunately, that means my summer vacation is over. So I will be squeezing my podcast in around my day schedule that's coming up. So, but I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here and talk sports with you. So until next week, you know the drill. Be nice to one another.